Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner that has a product, service, or message that you truly believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind the scenes look at real world networking and marketing tactics while leveraging LinkedIn to get what you have in front of many more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. Number of reasons. It's another new interview and another incredible entrepreneurial story going from startup and founder to obviously selling a business for 8 figures, which is something that you don't hear all too often. And then obviously navigating post-sale, which is a big question that comes up when a lot of people grow to scale and then they grow to sell. It's, what does that next chapter look like? When we turn the page and, what we've known and only done for the last X amount of years, now we have opportunity. And, what does that next opportunity look like? So we're going to talk about all that and more. So Luke Peters, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. So obviously, there's a lot that I want to talk about, more about, Apex CEO, which is your new company. But let's rewind the tape. I always like starting the episodes like this so we can give the audience a little bit more context as to how you got to where you are right now. So if you can rewind the tape, pre-2021 when you sold your previous company, going back to 2001, even before. And if you could rewind that business tape journey and press stop at a moment that you feel was a real pivotal moment for you, or almost a jumping off, or this moment acted as a catalyst to kind of translate to everything that you're doing today, what was that moment for you?
Okay, Scott. So, to start with that, I actually have a very defined moment there. But to start with it, I came from a really a fun family background of 12 siblings. Okay, so and that meant you had to like fight for anything you wanted, right? So, anyways, with that being the backdrop, and then going through college, and then finally, I was a hazardous waste scientist. Okay, that was my title after studying microbiology. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and I'm, the government jobs are, let's put it that they're not the most creative. And so I'm doing this job, and my little brother, who is, I don't know how much younger than me, 7, 8 years younger than me, was driving around in a sports car, never went to college, and was selling stuff online, right? And I'm driving a beat up old Toyota truck to LA, like an hour and a half each way from my job. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? How is this possible? And so I learned what he did. So he was selling laptop batteries on the internet in the year 2000, and he was crushing it. So that was the moment where I was kind of like, wait a minute here, I can stay at this job. And even the older guys at the job, they were like, Luke, no, you come back here to retire, get out of here. They're advising me. So it was definitely a very clear moment, and that's where I just it basically tried to understand, hey, how can I join this online economy? And the funny thing is, I didn't get into a category I knew. What I did is I was just like, I basically learned SEO, okay, back then. And SEO back then was pretty easy. It was a lot easier than it is now. And I on Yahoo, there was at the bottom of the results, believe it or not, it showed like the top 100 search terms or most popular search terms back then. And one of them, like the number 3 term, was portable air conditioner. And I was like, well, I should sell these things. And I look online, everybody's selling electronics back then, but people weren't selling, appliances, or especially any commercial products, right? Online. They weren't doing it successfully, at least, or in a sophisticated manner. And that was basically the spark that started things.
So growing up in a household of 12, plus obviously your parents, and we all have different mentors, different, I would say, motivators in our life. I grew up in a smaller family. It was just myself and my sister and my parents, but I also grew up in a very entrepreneurial minded household. And my dad became my first big inspiration that kind of got me into a lot of things. If outside of the business world, if you can kind of hone in outside of your brother in his sports car, was there someone that you looked up to, whether they were older or younger, as far as best pieces of advice or motivation that you got to tap into your own entrepreneurial spirit?
I didn't have, I definitely had some athletes and stuff like that that I looked up to, but just more in a way of, I love sports. But I think it was more just the example that your parents give you. Maybe as a kid, you don't think about it that you're looking up to them, but you see what they do. So my parents worked very hard, and any job they could pick up. I mean, we had a donut shop that was our family business, but then they had other businesses that they picked up and did. And my dad was, he's from a different generation. If something was broken, he fixed it. He found out, he fixed everything. And my mom always had a positive attitude, and so I think those were the things that really stuck with me that I learned. It wasn't how I grew up. If something went wrong, there was nobody to complain to. It's like, pick up and move on, right? And that's kind of just that old school mentality, which I think has served me well, because you learn later in life, nobody wants to hear about your complaints, right? It's like everybody has enough problems themselves. So you realize that, hey, you just got to move on. But I think that combined with, like, my mom just always, and even to this day, she's 84 years old, running a Catholic bookstore, and she works every single day. Okay. And she loves what she does. So having those examples and that positive attitude, I think it's really important in business, because there's a lot of times that you're going to stop or give up unless you have sort of, unless you can see a little bit further than tomorrow.
So going back to the athlete perspective, what athletes did you look up to?
Okay, yeah. So when I was a kid, I was a diehard Lakers and Raiders fan, and to some extent a Dodgers fan.
Are you talking the Magic Johnson era?
Exactly. I was Magic, Worthy, Byron Scott,
Kareem.
Cooper, Kareem. Yep, all those guys.
Yeah,
So
it's that. So I was fortunate, I'm 45, so I was fortunate to still not like when I was growing up, I still saw, before the obviously the downward, I would say, aspect of an athlete's career, I still saw Larry Bird and Magic Johnson kind of like in their prime with, Jordan on the rise of taking over the NBA. And
yep,
I grew up in Philadelphia, so, Charles Barkley when he was here, that was everything. And I still like, that is not to take away from, and I think a lot of people that are watching sports nowadays, and you look at a lot of the contracts these guys are signing, even if you look at Joel Embiid's contract, and he just signed a 3-year extension, and in the last year of that extension, he's going to make $69 million.
yeah,
That's like, some of the best players to ever play. People don't know this. Even though Michael Jordan is a billionaire, Scottie Pippen made $100 million more than Michael Jordan in their playing careers, because when Jordan retired, Pippen signed a massive contract with the Portland Trailblazers that people forgot about. And the contract that Pippen signed with alone, outside of what he made with the Bulls, was more than Jordan made in his entire career playing for Chicago. And I still feel, they always make the comparison of like today's superstars versus obviously some of the superstars that we grew up with. And I think having some of those people, I remember growing up, and still am a huge NBA fan, outside of my dad. I remember having, Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, hanging on my, bedroom wall. And sometimes I think it's a really good point that you brought up. There's a lot of people that think that they need to have, when they look up to someone, is it necessarily a parental figure? Is it a friend? Is it a family member? Sometimes it is that athlete that kind of gives you that drive and that notion to, again, I was big into sports, still am. Our son loves sports. And sometimes you need those external motivators to really kind of turn on the flame of what's yet to happen. And, and I love that analogy is that, you do need something just a little bit ahead of you to continue to push yourself forward, because the entrepreneurial journey is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs. And, that kind of brings me to my next question. Prior to obviously selling the prior company and exiting out of that, when you look at your time spent um, in NewAir, what did you find? Because again, a lot changed, from 2001 to 2021, having a 2-decade career, there were so many different iterations that I can't even imagine you had to go through. And just a little bit about my backstory. I was in the fitness industry. So we had three, fitness clubs starting in the mid to late 90s. And I finally exited out of the industry in 2016. But during those 18 years, as you know, business models change. So the mom and pop gym, where we could charge a $99 initiation fee and $45 a month, was completely squashed with the model of Planet Fitness and 24-hour fitness and LA Fitness, where they had these huge 30 to 40,000 square foot facilities, and they're charging $9.99 when we couldn't. So what different iterations did you see at NewAir over those 20-year career that you feel were kind of like the defining, I don't want to say defining moments, but really those pivotal moments that kind of led to the 2021 sale?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great analogy. After this, I'd love to hear more about the gym industry, because it seems like that would be a fun business to have, right? Oh man, have my own gym. But yeah, you bring up a great point. It's like the industry has moved so many times. Plus, that industry had to deal with COVID. But anyways, yeah, in mine, there were a number of those situations. Okay, so the first thing that we're unfortunate, anybody who started e-commerce around 2001, you have to remember, like any entrepreneurs out there, I mean, I know this is common sense, but a lot of times people start a business and they look at their skill set, and that's what you should do. But the thing is, you want to be rowing that boat downstream. You want to be going with the current. Okay. So, and there's a lot of businesses now where it was downstream, but now it's kind of moving upstream, right? So you have to think about that. And back then it was downstream all day long. So, okay, we're going even 2008, which crushed a lot of people, right? Didn't touch us. Because what was happening was, the CAGR, the growth of online was so rapid back then. Now it's kind of, not, it's slowed quite a bit since then. And I would say the biggest challenging moment for us was right around 2012. Okay, and what happened was the whole world of online changed as far as advertising. So all the big box stores got into online marketing. So before that, we had been at the top of all the search results and the paid results, and the paid results were super cheap. You were buying, Google paid ads for like 5 cents, back in the day. And then maybe they were like 20 or 30 cents later on. It was so cheap, and we complained about those increases but then what happened? Home Depot, Walmart, Target, they all got into the business. Okay. So suddenly within like a year, we went from always being in the top 3 organics to now being displaced by these big ones. And a lot more. Best Buy, everybody else, right? Everybody, and they have huge marketing teams. What are you going? You're not gonna go compete against them. Even at a small to medium sized business size. So what happened was I started a new company at that time. Okay, and it was a test. What I wanted to do is we were 100% direct to consumer, and so the thing was, okay, let's do a little offshoot and do a little test and see if we can go into this B2B. We call it B2B, selling directly to the retailers instead of finding the customer yourself. And the beauty of that is they're doing all the marketing. They're getting the eyeballs. You just got to show up on their page. And it works so well that we converted the whole business into that model within a year. So that was a really big pivot, because it sounds like it's not, but it's a lot, because we were 100% direct to consumer. So like your books are totally different. You don't have any accounts receivable. Your accounting team is set up different. Your systems and collection systems are not there. So the whole company really had to change. And then also your EDI or your connectivity with these retailers is a different setup than just fulfilling an order that's from your website. So I think at that time when that happened, we were I want to say like 17-18 million dollars back then in 2012. But that kind of catapulted us on our next stage of growth, right? Because now we had the direct to consumer, and then we're doing the B2B. So you call that multi-channel, and we were able to kind of get our next leg of growth after that.
Was there a time, I mean, I want to hear how COVID kind of changed things for you guys, because I know COVID changed things for a lot of people. Did you have any thought at any time prior to 2021 when the decision was made to sell the company? During that 20-year timeline, were there other points that you kind of played around with the idea of maybe getting out now? And, obviously you didn't. Was there a reason why you didn't? And then obviously that kind of carried over into 2021. So kind of, walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, when you have a growing business, you're going to be fielding calls from investors. So we are always getting those calls. And what, I would say my mistake was not understanding the sell process that well. I really got educated on it around 2016, 2017. So in that time frame. And what I mean by that is that really I'm a firm believer now that obviously there are some businesses that are lifestyle businesses by choice, right? And really like great, just cash flow businesses, and people don't have to work a lot of time, and they may never want to sell it. But for most businesses, especially businesses if you have employees, and you're growing towards a goal, your goal should be to sell. And I finally kind of realized that around, because there's a lot of leverage you get on a sale, that we can talk about. Like you're pulling years and years and years of forward sales forward onto one day. Okay. But anyways, around 2016, so the big, the kind of aha moment was talking to a business banker, an M&A banker, and he was just asking me, and it was just one of those calls, but it was a local one, so I got to know him, and I said, okay, well, here's my numbers, and he's like, well, Luke, and he was very polite about it. I'm like a pretty direct person. He's really polite. He's like, yeah, I mean, no, those look good, but what you kind of need to do, and he kind of like edged it on the side. He's like, you need to have your margin in your industry, your net margin needs to be over 10%. And I go, okay, why? Because then, like, you don't always want to push it up there. You may want to reinvest in your business because otherwise you're just paying taxes, right? And he's like, no, you need to be at that, because if you're below 10%, that's sort of the market telling you that your brand isn't that strong. Like, where's your pricing power, right? So you need to be above 10% for your industry. Other industries higher, other industries lower. And then I was like, whoa, that makes total sense. Okay, I get where he's going. And then he goes, okay, and you got to get your EBITDA above 5 million to 7 million, and you'll get a better multiple on your sale. So because what happens is if you're below 5 to 7 million, let's say your company's like 2 or 3 million, which is awesome, you will get a lot of offers, but you might get rolled up into another company. Okay, so smaller businesses will get rolled up into another company. Often your multiples are a little bit compressed, maybe by a couple points. And then if you're a little bit bigger, they can buy you on what's called a platform company, okay, where you're rolling up other businesses, right? So those were the things where I said, oh, whoa, okay, that's my goal. I got to get to these two different points here. And that kind of set the planning forward.
So before we talk about Apex CEO, tell the audience, because again, there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are at six figures and looking to get to multiple six figures. There are people that are multiple six that are looking to get to seven. And a lot of the listening base, these are founders, these are coaches, consultants, service professionals. For yourself, making those leaps in your business, what best advice or best practices could you give the audience of some simple things that they can put into place to not guarantee those types of, returns, but start taking the necessary steps towards them?
Okay, good, very good question. And the reason is because okay, a lot of times when people are looking at growth, they're kind of find ways to get incremental growth, right? And incremental growth is great, and all businesses should be getting incremental growth. But in your plan, you have to have some sort of transformational lever or leverage in your growth plan. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. And the thing is, you should want to get there, because actually you can get there, and you can get there with less stress. So I would say the number one thing I learned is getting the right people on the team. If you look at all big companies, it's always a war for talent. Okay. And then small companies, it's really hard to afford that talent. But the first thing is to really think about where you need, well, actually, even before getting people, that I think is the biggest transformational one. But I think look at your product. Okay, this is where a lot of advisors, by the way, they don't go into this because they're like systems oriented. But you got to look at your product offering, right? Where can you get more leverage on your product offering? Usually that's going to be like, new product introductions, or that's going to be, something that's, product additions to your existing customers. Most businesses can get new product introductions that they don't think about. But they're too stuck in their business to do the planning of developing breakthrough innovative products. Okay, their mind is too close. So I'm like a big believer in like a positive mindset, Napoleon Hill type stuff. Because I think people are like just too, they're not looking too, they're just looking straight ahead. Okay, and new product introduction is, I think, the easiest way. And then when you have that new product introduction, you bring talent in to get leverage on that. Okay, this is talent that brings skill sets that you don't have. They sell to a certain sector. They've got proven results. Okay, these are like generally more seasoned talent that, like right now, there's so many opportunities to find great people like this who are going to bring skill sets that you don't have. And I think the mistake of hiring for younger entrepreneurs is, if you look around at your leadership team and you're the smartest guy in there, then that's a problem. Like you need to be hiring people that are smarter, better than you. And even if you're like a one-man shop, you can still do it. It's just that next hire can be that transformational hire, and maybe you can hire that person like on a heavy commission or something like that, where it's going to work for both sides and it can fit within the budget.
I love that advice because, we teach the community that we work with, you know, you need to be shooting for 15 to 25% growth each year. That's kind of like our measure, and so my wife and I, we always sit down the beginning of Q4, which is at the time of recording right now, and we start mapping out our year ahead. We start thinking about Q1 through Q4 of next year at the end of the year. So we obviously already have our projections for the end of this year, and we start thinking, okay, we know where we're going to end up by the end of this year, and we're going to shoot for a 25% growth next year. Where is that 25% growth going to come from? And what things, whether it's team, systems, paid advertising and marketing, what do we need to put into play to obviously make that happen? And I think you have to take that 10,000 foot view, but also, to your point, my wife always says you can't see the label from inside the jar. So if you're spending too much time working in the business, that leaves you with no time to work on the business. And I think that's the big thing. Sometimes you need to step out of it so you can kind of get a clearer picture of maybe the kinks or the bottlenecks that may be there, that whether it's hiring team or scaling back, or like you said, creating that innovative product that you can then filter talent into to create that 15 to 25% revenue growth year after year. So when we talk about you transitioning now into your next venture, which is Apex CEO, where obviously you now coach and consult others in business, other entrepreneurs, how did you, A, come to decide that's what you wanted to do, but more so, B, where did the, I would say, target market come through with all of this? Like, all right, these are the people that I want to help. These are the people that I want to work with. Just walk the audience through a little bit of that, what that looked like.
Yeah, sure thing, Scott. And then before I jump into that, just on that same point about, your listeners looking for innovation. My oldest daughter's got a business, okay, and she helps young women get their first job in marketing who can't get into marketing, okay? So it's like a marketing boot camp. And her innovation was to now create a course. So it went from live training, okay, now she's going to have a course, and I think she's just launching it in a week or two. But the point is, like, as you mentioned, you have a lot of listeners that might be in similar categories. Maybe they are course creators and they don't have a live event. Maybe they coach live, and well, then they could do a course. Like that's what I'm talking about for new products. For that type of business, there's so many different options out there that I think people can transform their lives. And to your question, how I work, I sold the business. I actually have sold a previous business as well. This is way back when I was in college, a small business. But I took a couple years off. Okay, I like to surf and spend time with the family, coach some more sports with the kids, and do some travel. And I'm always hearing from friends and helping friends in their businesses and those types of things. And I thought, this is enjoyable. Like I really love getting in here, and I think that I can add something special to these founders. So my ideal individual to help as a founder CEO. Okay, if you're funded, you probably have coaching and mentoring assets. So founder CEO, and I'm very knowledgeable in the product businesses. Okay, any physical product, because I've had a worldwide global supply chain and warehouses around the country and stuff like that. But also, even if it's a non-product, just because I've helped so many friends, my daughter and other people, so on their service or intellectual type of businesses. And I really, for me, it's more like it's like I love the system side of things, and I love marketing, okay, and then product development, but also getting deep into the business about margins. Like margins are so important, okay, especially like as you mentioned, your audience, 6-figure, 7-figure. If you're selling something like, margins solves all problems. Okay, as an athlete, they say winning solves all problems, right? And so I say in business, margin solves all problems. And too many people accept low margins because they don't know how to position themselves and market themselves. So those are the types of areas I love. The branding, the positioning, the marketing, and then the product development, and of course onto the systems and the planning. Yep.
So with obviously the audience in mind, if you were to best describe how you work differently with people. So if someone's saying, you know what, Luke, I'm really interested in how you serve and how you work with, people like us, what would you say are some of the differentiating factors between you and other coaches or consultants out there that are helping people the way that you are?
Well, okay, the first thing is, okay, I'm doing this because I want to do it, right? I don't right now. In fact, I have this awesome. I have an office right by the beach, and I did this purposely because I love to come into work here and do what I'm doing. I don't have to do this right now after selling the company, so I really care about the clients. Okay, I really want to be there for them. So it's not a thing where, okay, you only get me 2 hours a month or whatever the case is. Like, text me, let me help solve your problems. I really want to make their lives better. The other thing is I look at the whole individual. Like I also, love fitness, and I believe in like the body and the mind. Okay. Like, and a lot of entrepreneurs are burned out. Okay. They are stressed out. They're full of anxiety. So, I mean, you can't be successful if you are day to day in fear. Okay. And I don't mean you're scared. I'm not saying that, but it's like people are too reactive on their decisions. So I also want to, coach all the way around the individual, right? It's like, I'm going to make them successful in their business, but I also think of their personal, okay, your family, your personal life, your stresses, because you have to get solutions to those things if you're going to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to kind of stay where you are. I've seen too many people do that where their businesses just kind of plateau. And so I think those are the things that set me apart, as well as the fact that I've been at every stage. So I started in a garage, started with no funding. And I think that helps me relate to entrepreneurs in the sense where, I'm not too big for anybody. I mean, I grew up flipping donuts, so I can relate at all levels of the entrepreneur. And I just love the journey and helping people.
I love that. So Luke, if people are interested in learning more about you and how you can serve them, where's the best way for people to connect with you, find you online, or find you on social?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, definitely go to the website, apexceo.co. And over there, you can schedule like just a free 15, 20-minute strategy call. So you just go to the calendar, and I can hopefully solve a problem or two in those 15, 20 minutes. And it's an easy way to connect. And then also just find me on LinkedIn, Luke, I think it's 2_ Peters. So Luke Peters on LinkedIn, new Yahoo channel, Strategy by Luke. So those are the places to find me.
Awesome. All that information that Luke just shared obviously will be in the description of this podcast episode and the email broadcast that goes out. So Luke, final question before we sign off today. What does success truly mean to you?
I was listening to an investing podcast, and this guy was talking to might have been the Dalai Lama. It was a monk or the Dalai Lama. And he asked, what are we all after? And the monk replied, "We're after peace of mind." And
Mm.
I thought, man, that is very telling. That is so true. Okay, it's not about the dollars in the bank. That's helpful, and that can give peace of mind. But really, that's your ultimate goal. I think you can achieve your financial goals, but maybe put that there at the end, that you're looking for that peace of mind, so you can sleep good, and your whole life feels fulfilling.
Yeah, I could not agree more. My wife always talks about living a life striving towards health, wealth, peace, and abundance. And again, you got those cornerstones. You're setting yourself up for uh, a lifetime of not just success but happiness. You gotta just live to live, not to work to live. And you know the adage, you'll never work a day in your life when you love what you do. And my wife was listening to a podcast episode um earlier today from Marie Forleo, who was interviewing the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And they were basically talking about how a lot of people curb their direction in life to please other people instead of going down a path of their true authentic selves. And I really believe that when you really listen to what your calling is or what your higher purpose is and what you should be doing, don't get into a line of business because others want you to get into that line of business, or you feel that's your predetermined route. I mean, for me, there were certain instances and circumstances that came into play that got me in the fitness industry, but that's why I left in 2016 to kind of carve my own path. And my wife came into my life, and the rest is history. And all of those things are synchronicity, emotion. And I think the big message is, really just follow your dreams. And again, it's not tied to any sort of monetary outcome. The money shows up when the impact of what you're doing is felt. That's my true belief. So if you want to impact more people, that's going to create more financial flexibility to do what you're doing. And Luke, I love what you're doing because, just to reiterate what Luke said, he's not doing this because he has to. He's doing this because he wants to. And you got to give in order to get. And obviously, you're giving a ton back. And I just appreciate you, and obviously you sharing your journey, and obviously coming on the podcast today. And just thank you again for being here.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely. So again, all the information on Luke and how to connect with him and everything that he's doing at Apex CEO, obviously you'll find in the show notes and the description. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrow.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love, and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.